Yo, what's up everybody? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the type of video that I shoot a lot of, and that is the self-shot video. Whether it be for YouTube like this, or a skit that I'm doing with friends where I'm running all the gear, but I'm also acting in it. The self-shot video can be tough, and there's a lot of mistakes that can be made. So today I'm going to talk about the most common mistakes that are made, and then some of the tips, tricks, and tools that we can use to take shots that might just look like this and make them look a lot more cinematic. So let's get into it with the first thing. One of the biggest mistakes that I make when I self-shoot is just not budgeting my time right. It takes a lot of time to properly set up lighting and to get your audio to a good place, to set up the composition of your shot. And then if you've got multiple scene locations, having to take everything down, set it up again. So just making sure that you give yourself enough time for all that, and also making sure that the actors that you bring in, whether they're your friends or not, are aware of the amount of time that goes into the production side of things so that you can all utilize that time as well as you can. The next mistake that's commonly made when you're self-shooting is just not taking the time to thoroughly light your scene, to really understand what kind of mood you want to create, to understand what sort of lighting is already in your scene and how to light for the dynamic range of your camera in that scene. And then to just create focus and visual interest using lighting. So let's go over that a little bit, and we'll light our scene right now to see if we can make it a little bit better. And the first thing we'll talk about is what I meant by lighting your scene within your camera's dynamic range. And dynamic range essentially is the range your camera can capture between the brightest and the darkest parts of its image. So when you're looking at the camera that I'm using, like the GH6, at its very best, it can only pick up 13 stops of dynamic range. Compare that to the Arri Alexa, one of the Hollywood standards of cameras, and you're looking at 17 stops of dynamic range. And what this really means when you look at an image like this, when I'm just pointing the camera outside right now, is you're looking at an image that is too bright to see anything outside, just so that everything inside can be properly exposed. Or you're looking at an image that you can see everything outside, but everything inside is far too dark to see. Now look at an image from the Arri Alexa where you can see everything outside, you can see everything inside, and nothing is too dark or too bright. And when we go back to this image, I'm actually looking out this glass door with my own two eyes right now, and nothing outside looks that bright. Nothing inside here looks that dark. And that's because some believe that our own eyes have about 21 stops of dynamic range. So how do we work with the limited amount of dynamic range that a camera like mine has? Well, first we use the settings to get the most out of it. Turn on the dynamic range boost, and then make sure that we're shooting in a log profile. This will maximize the amount of dynamic range that the camera can capture. Then we'll have to expose down the brightest parts of our image, and then we have to bring in our own lighting to bring up the levels of the darkest parts of our image. It might seem self-explanatory, but ultimately, if you're not exposing within your camera's dynamic range, it's just not gonna look as good, it's not gonna look as cinematic, and it's a mistake that I have made before. Next, what I did for this particular scene is I brought in some motivated lighting. Motivated lighting are just real lighting sources that we can bring into our scene to give off the impression that all the lighting that we have is coming from a real source. And I have this light that I brought in, and I positioned it right by where my key light is to give off the impression that the light coming from my key light, the real source of lighting, is actually coming from this lamp that you're gonna be able to see in the scene. Next, I'm gonna close the curtain on this big glass door so that I can control the light inside. I've got this fill light over here with the umbrella, and then I've got my key light, which is the main source of lighting for me, the subject, as I'm self-shooting. And I recently got this key light, and it's a softbox kit, and it's been really good for self-shot videos. So let's talk a little bit about that, because the right lighting gear is really important to making your self-shot videos look that much better. This is the 80D from GVM, and aside the fact that it's easy to assemble, it comes with a grid, it can be powered by battery or cable, and has been plenty bright enough for me even through freelance interviews and headshot projects that I've had. But here's why I really like it for self-shot videos. You can control everything by your phone. You can grab your external monitor, control the brightness, control the color temp, and you can do everything right from your mark. This really saves me time when I'm setting up lighting shots. Not only that, but it has effects that you can set that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get by self-shooting. For instance, if you want it to look like you're in front of a fire or by a candle, or if you're watching television, or even if you're in front of paparazzi. And I'm not getting paid by GVM to say any of this. I've just really been liking their gear lately. And at $199 for the softbox kit, it's been a good value for me. So if you're in the market, check them out. All right, let's get back to it. All right, so with just a couple motivated lights, we've got the GVM key light, a little bit of a fill light, and some natural light. We've really been able to create some depth in this shot to create more of a mood that's a little bit more dramatic and is going to fit for this little scene that I'm about to shoot. And it didn't take that much effort. So compare this to the shot that we had just before it. A little bit of lighting and a little bit of intention with your lighting can really go a long way. Now let's talk a little bit about another one of the major issues, and that is nailing the focus and nailing exposure. And here are the tools that I've been using to really help me with that. I don't really like using autofocus. It might be because I have the GH6 and the autofocus isn't very reliable, but I just always have liked using manual focus and having control over my own focus, which just isn't a possibility when you're self-shooting a video. So in order to make sure that I'm in focus in my self-shot videos, I use a stand that I keep on set, and I just set it on my mark. I get the focus to the stand, and I'm good to go. It's handy to use this in conjunction with an external monitor. I highly recommend getting an external monitor for self-shot videos, not only because it has a larger viewfinder that you can check focus, but you can use an HDMI cable that's a little bit longer, get it closer to you. You can use tools like focus peaking, and you can really make sure that you're getting your focus where it needs to be. Also super helpful for making sure that you're getting your exposure right. Exposure takes practice, to get it right, especially when you're shooting with a log profile. So using tools like false color, which a lot of external monitors come with, is a great way to check and make sure that you're getting your exposure exactly where you need it to be so that it looks good when you bring it into post. Now, when it comes to moving shots and a moving subject, that's when you might need to rely a little bit on autofocus. And that kind of brings us to our next subject, which is making your self-shot videos look more interesting. There's usually not a lot of movement, so adding movement to your self-shot videos. All right, so movement in shots, a great way to make your shot more visually interesting. Also, it can enhance emotion, it can draw focus to a particular character. But how do we do it when we're self-shooting? Well, a mechanical slider is how. We can get this set up, and using a remote control, we can set some movements, and we can just set it and let it run, and then we can act out our scene. So let's get this set up, and we can use it in a few different ways to make a shot like this look even more interesting. All right, so we have the camera moving right now on the mechanical slider. We're doing kind of a dolly movement, in, out. Right now I've got the focus point set to right in the center of the movement, and I up the aperture just a little bit so that more will be in focus as the camera moves. That's one strategy. The other strategy is to use autofocus and see how that will work. I'm going to test it on the GH6 next. But one other thing I wanted to note too on these kind of moving shots, if you can get some objects in the foreground of the shot, it really accentuate the movement of the camera, make it look like it's moving a lot more than it actually is. It's just all about how you establish the scene and establish the shots and the objects in the scene. So something in the foreground will really help make the movement look that much better. So this shot is where I'm testing out the autofocus, and you can see with the light, it just pulses a lot. The change of focus on my eyes doesn't look great. I'm just not a big fan of the way autofocus looks on this particular camera. It probably wouldn't be noticed by that many people, but if you're okay with this kind of look, by all means, use the autofocus. It's an option for you. And this shot's just another example that you can get from the motorized slider. The GVM slider that I have will actually pan your camera as it's moving from right to left to keep the subject right in the middle of the shot, which I think is a really great feature. I'm probably not going to use this in the final shot, but I just wanted to give an example of some of the other types of shots you can get using a motorized slider like this. All right, so we have everything pretty much set up. We've got our lighting set up, we've got movement of the camera, our focus looks good, our exposure looks good. The only thing left to really worry about is getting good quality audio. And this is tough when you're self-shooting because there's really no way to monitor it. The two ways that I usually go about it though are to, one, get a lav mic and get it taped underneath your clothes so it's not showing. It's inconspicuous and it picks up good audio wherever you are, however you're moving. Also get a boom mic set up on a C-stand with a long enough arm so that it can pick up the audio as well and kind of use these two in conjunction together. Now that we have everything together, we're ready to shoot a self-shot cinematic little skit. let's come up with a little story that we can execute right now with the shots that we've put together. It's over. I'm sorry. This relationship just isn't healthy for me anymore, and it was fine when I was younger, but you're just not good for me. Look, I'm always gonna remember the times that we had, but this is so hard to say. This is goodbye. The doctor says I have too high of cholesterol. So those are the tips, tricks, and tools that I use to help make my self-shot videos look better. Let me know in the comments what sort of things that you do to make your self-shot videos look better. You know, ultimately I think it all comes down to how much we're really willing to put into each video and how much effort we're willing to put in to make everything look better. You know, make our story that more immersive by making the quality that much better. So hopefully this was helpful for you and you can get out there and start practicing some of this as well. And I'll see you in the next video.